So, let's take a listen to Dexter's version from his album. From Biting the Apple. It's a great recording. And so, I transcribed this 40 years ago, and I think there's a lot of really great information in his solo. They can teach improvisers, jazz improvisers, about the language of bebop and also about bossa nova as well. So I wrote out a handful of little melodic phrases we can try and learn. All right, so we'll start with that. So first, let's take a listen to the recording and. So this, or we can play through some of these licks ahead of time, so you kind of get an idea what they sound like. So the first one, over this C minor to G7 altered to C minor 7. That's the first lick. Second lick is. Third lick is. Third one. Fourth one is. Fifth one.
Gonna get B flat.
And then the last one. So, I mean, these little melodic ideas are, I think, very idiomatic of bebop style in that they outline the chords very, very well. And Dexter is doing some kind of is doing a lot of these idiomatic techniques that beboppers have been doing since the early 1940s. And Dexter was in the early, he was in the first wave of the bebop innovators. Like in the early 1940s when bebop started with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk and all those guys. They took their music early in the decade to California, and on tour they were playing all these gigs and whatnot, and that's where they met Dexter Gordon, who was a California-based jazz musician, and started hanging out with him. He would go to their gigs, and then that's how he started kind of learning the language and became part of the kind of bebop movement. So, as we listen to this recording, let's try and keep an ear out for these various licks, okay? there. And he takes a bunch of choruses. But one of the things I really appreciate about Dexter's playing is that he's very melodic, and he develops his little themes, and he tries to take them as far as he possibly can, right? So a common downfall of many young improvisers is that they'll catch on to the theme, and then they'll, could be anything, could be something as simple as that, right? So instead of developing that, the next sort right? We're kind of trying to develop this ascending theme that arpeggiates the chord. Many young improvisers will play a theme and then just abandon it immediately, right? Which is not something you necessarily want to do. In jazz, what we are essentially doing is theme and variations, right? This is a practice going back maybe I guess even before the Baroque era in Western classical music history, where composers will take a theme and then they'll just write these kind of variations on this one theme and then draw it out as long as humanly possible. And this can create these very elaborate, very complex compositions. And in jazz, what we do is we'll take a head, a melody. Oftentimes, these 32-bar melodies or 16-bar melodies or whatever it may be, and then we'll take that as our theme, and then we'll try and create little variations on that. And then as we're improvising in real time, we vary the different motifs that we might come up with on the spot. And by doing that, you create a sense of cohesion in your playing and in your improvising. If you don't develop your ideas fully enough, your improvising will start to sound kind of scatterbrained, and there won't be an interior logic to it. So if you all the great soloists of history, they all had their solos all have a sense of logic to them, and they kind of develop over a period of time. They have kind of a narrative arc. Many jazz musicians and scholars, they talk about this notion of telling a story or saying something with their music. They're talking about this notion of building a narrative, where you might have like in English, for example, if you're writing an essay, you have like a thesis statement, right? This main idea of what your paper's going to be about goes in your introductory paragraph, and then your body paragraphs kind of develop that thesis and they defend it, right? And then your conclusion, your last paragraph, kind of restates your thesis and sums up what you've been talking about this whole time. And so as improvisers, we try and do a similar thing, where we might state a theme in the very beginning, and then we might develop that throughout the solo, from chorus to chorus or from phrase to phrase, and then at the very end, there's kind of a logical conclusion to it. We might be building up the energy as the solo starts, and then there might be a climactic point, maybe halfway through the solo or 3/4 of the way through the solo, and then we draw down the energy. So we can manipulate all these things as soloists to create an interesting narrative arc. And even listening to Dexter's solo is a rather long solo. It's like 3 or 4 minutes, and he takes, I don't know how many choruses, like 8 or 9 choruses, something like that. But he starts out relatively simplistic, and he starts to get more and more complex. The rhythmic values that he uses get quicker. He's using by the midway through the solo, he's using these kind of 16th note runs and triplets and things, 8th note triplets and things like this. And the energy is building, and the rest of the rhythm section is getting involved with them and building up the energy. And then as the solo kind of dissipates out, he's drawing back down the energy. And so there's a really clear narrative arc to his playing. So that's something that every improviser needs to keep in mind when they're playing. So to back up a little bit, I'm going to just hand out another thing. Talk about scales. I don't know how much you guys have learned about different scales and modes, but it's worth belaboring.
I was just trying to figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, so here's a collection of what I call essential jazz scales. So we kind of dig into exactly what these little motifs are. They are basically they can be associated with these various scales or modes. On the first several pages, I have the Greek modes, the ancient Greek modes. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mysilydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So these modes date back to ancient times in the Greeks, where there were different regions of Greece, and these different regions had their own kind of musical styles, and the various modes were associated with different regions of Greece. And in modern, going through the history of Western art music, these modes were used in quite often in medieval music and Gregorian chant. They would provide these little modes where they had a pedal point, like a drone, and then they would the whole chant would be on just one mode. Ways to create the melodic material of their compositions throughout history. And in jazz, kind of a theoretical framework or a pedagogical approach has emerged in the last 60 years or so called Chord-Scale Theory, where all the different chords that we're playing through over these tunes, like in Bossa, each chord is associated with a different mode. So the minor chords, like the C minor 7, starts out associated with like Dorian, for example, so C Dorian, and F minor over F Dorian. Right? And then you could also play Aeolian over these minor chords. That would work, or Phrygian also works over minor chords. And the reason why that is because there's no choice. So for Dorian, for example, the kind of formula, if you will, for the mode is it has a third and a lower third and a lower seventh scale degree. So if you think about it in relation to the major scale, the first one, Ionian, you flat the third note, right? And it's like 4, 5, 6, 7. So I like to think about these modes in relation to the major scale. The major scale is the first mode, the Ionian mode. So for Dorian, I would recommend thinking flat 3 and flat 7. So for F minor, playing F Dorian, we might start out with thinking F major scale, the F Ionian. Or here we go. We flat the third scale degree and the seventh scale degree. And then for half diminished chords, like this D minor 7 flat 5 that you have in bar 5 of the tune, you can play the Locrian mode, which is the 7th mode. Locrian, the formula for this one is flat 2, flat 3, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. You flat the second scale degree, the third, the fifth, sixth, and seventh, right? So you end up getting great over these half diminished chords. So for that D half diminished, you can do this D Locrian. And it's perfectly over that. And then for the dominant chords like G7, the following chord in the tune, you can play the 5th mode, which is Mysilydian. Mysilydian. the formula for this one is a lower 7th scale degree. So think about C major or C Ionian. You lower the 7th scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that B flat. Okay. So for that G7 in the tune, you can play G mixed lick. And then for major chords, Ionian, which is the major scale. So those are all the different modes that we would necessarily use over the tune. Also, you could use another one, which is not one of the Greek modes, but it's a commonly used scale. You turn to page 4 of the handout. Look at superloquium. This is one of these scales that it's called a few things. You call it the altered scale or the superloquium scale. It's a variation on the locrian mode, but you basically flat all of the notes. So the formula is flat 2, flat 3, flat 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. So instead of C major, you just use flat all. So D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat. And this scale is great over any kind of altered dominant chord. So all the chords that all the dominant chords throughout the tune, like G7, A flat 7, and A flat 7, you can turn those into altered dominants just by adding these kind of alterations. Like a piano player, and you might play instead of a G7, just a regular G9 chord, something like that. It sounds okay on its own. It's not super colorful. We can alter that chord by adding some of these kind of extensions to it. We can flat the, for example, we could flat the 9, flat 15. That's a common voicing. So adding A flat and a G flat, or A flat and a E flat rather. So then you put in G, concert G, superloquium. The scale fits perfectly over these altered dominant chords. And so if we go back to the Dexter Gordon licks here, the Bossa licks, you'll see that Dexter stays true to this notion of chord-scale theory, right? Where he look at the first lick, number 1, that C minor chord, he's playing C Dorian. And then on that G7 altered, he plays the superloquium scale. Right? And he does it in an interesting way. So a key kind of idea improvisers often do is they on like strong beats, like on beat 1 and beat 3, they'll play chord tones. We'll try and outline the chord. So on that particular chord, on that particular lick, he starts on the 3rd of the chord, B flat, right? B1. And then by beat 3, he's playing the root, C. The next bar on the G7, he's playing the root, right? G. And there he's playing the 5th scale 3, B flat. So this all has to do with outlining the chord. The great improvisers will very, very efficiently outline the chord. So a good rule of thumb is you should be able to hear the chords as the listener should be able to hear the chords passing as you're improvising. So you should be able to hear that I'm outlining a C minor chord. As you get more advanced in your improvising, you'll get into what they call outside playing. So playing outside of the tonal center, which creates tension. There's this notion of tension and release, right? So to create tension, you can add more dissonance to your phrase, and to release the tension, you add more consonance, right? So the difference between consonance and dissonance. So outside playing would be to play, I don't know, something like a C sharp minor over a C minor. So like, you know, that C minor 7 chord, maybe I'll play. Right, so there I outlined the different chord, a very dissonant chord, and then resolved it to a consonant inside, so outside, inside. You listen to a lot of great improvisers, they'll do a lot of that as well. It's more getting more modern playing in the last, I don't know, since the 1960s maybe, 1960s and 70s, jazz improvisers started to really get into avant-garde playing and free jazz. Like we study the history of jazz, the music gets progressively more dissonant as time goes on, right? And like kind of hit its high point with Ornette Coleman and some of John Coltrane's stuff in the 1960s, late 50s, where they were just throwing out the whole playbook and they were just playing all kinds of weird stuff. Cecil Taylor, there was like no tonal center.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So is playing like the sharp 11s, 9s, like all those?
Alterations, yeah.
Yeah, are those like part of the tonal center, or would that be notes that are like part of like playing outside?
Well, I would consider that inside.
Okay.
So like if you're playing like a C7 chord and you're altering that C7, that C dominant. Or if you're adding a sharp 11, that sharp.
Since it's a color,
It's a
still
color, it's still inside. I think it has to do with intention too.
Okay.
So like if you're just playing that, if you're just like hanging on that F sharp, that's pretty hit. It's dissonant. Monk, one of the great bebop pianists and one of the great bebop improvisers and composers, he loved that sharp 11 sound. He used it constantly. He would throw that into his improvising all the time. He did a lot of minor seconds too. Really dissonant stuff. Has to do with intention. Maybe don't think too much about outside playing right now. But that's like a whole like semester's worth of stuff to work through, different techniques on outside playing. But for now, let's concentrate on inside playing, which is playing these various modes up and down, right? And a good way to practice this is to kind of go through the tune and play the various modes. You go C, C minor, these different modes, and they'll help you gain facility to be able to play a little melody and things like this while you're improvising. So why don't we play through some of these licks together, okay? So why don't we play through? We'll do it all together. So let's like vamp. Like play the like bossa groove, and I just want you to vamp on like C minor, or actually do the C minor to the G7 to the C minor, so 3 bars, and let's play through that lick number 1. Right? Okay. we're gonna loop it. We're gonna play this lick a handful of times and see if we can get under our fingers and whatnot. So 1, 2, ready, go. Not as scalar as the first one. This one has to do more with outlining the chord tones, right? So this one, so it's outlining the C minor 9 chord, right? E, B flat, G, E flat, D, C. And then on the F minor, it outlined that F minor 7 chord. That's another really useful technique, is basically arpeggiating these various chords. So you'll see that throughout Dexter's solo and throughout all the great kind of bebop improvisers and even into the modern era, how improvisers will make the changes. We want to make the changes while we're improvising, right? We don't want to be playing a bunch of crazy stuff necessarily right out of the bat. We can start by playing inside. So let's play the second lick, the lick number 2, and we'll kind of stamp that, okay? The C minor to the F minor, all right? That, 1, 2, ready, go. Deals with a little bit of both, so arpeggiating the various chords and also throwing in some scalar stuff too, so mixing and matching. And in this one, so he's doing that super locrian, or the locrian to the super locrian. And then here he's outlining that C minor. And you'll notice too that he's emphasizing the chord tones on the strong beats on B1 and B3. So on B3 of that D half diminished, he's starting on a G, concert G. Then B1 of the G7, he's starting on the third scale degree, B flat. And on B3, he has the B natural. Then going to C minor, the next chord, he starts the line on a G, which is the 5th of the chord. On a B3, E flat, which is the 3rd of the chord, and then ends the phrase on the root. Right? So that's a real important thing to notice, and try and emphasize in your own playing is this is part of outlining the chords and making the changes, if you will, is those chord tones, the strong chord tones and the strong beats. All right, so let's try this phrase, and we're going to do the same thing. We're gonna loop it. Okay. So 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. triplets, right? That's all within one beat. And then on beat 4, right? Right? And there's a grace note there on beat 4, right? Okay? Let's try it again. Let's slow it down. Yep. Oh, sorry. I apologize. We'll do the next one, number 4. This is actually one of my favorite ones. This is a cool one. So there he's outlining it's more of a scalar line, right? So he's doing this low prelude over D half diminished, the super low prelude over D7, and then Dorian over C minor. Okay, so let's try this one a little slow, okay? Alright, maybe like this. So 1, 2, ready, go. Which goes through the 2-5-1 progression in the key of D flat, right? That E flat minor 7 to the A flat 7 to the D flat major 7. So here, this is a kind of a quintessential scalar line where he's going up on the Dorian, and here he's using chromaticism, and then outlining that A flat 7 chord and ending on the D flat. Okay. So another kind of main idea of the bebop kind of improvisatory tradition is that not only would they by outlining these chords, they would use these different modes and scales, but they would oftentimes use the chromatic scale as well, right? Which is just all the notes going up by a half step. They would use chromaticism to get to their kind of target note, right, if you will. So the target note here, if we're looking at the second measure of the phrase, so the target note is to get from F to A flat. So we're using chromaticism and then going back down. So F and A flat are the 2 target notes. So that's another kind of trick you can use in your improvisation as well. If you find yourself improvising and you can't figure out how to get from one note to the next, when in doubt, just you can use some chromaticism, right? And it'll work. Especially if things are moving really quickly. Because sometimes when you're improvising, you'll find yourself in a certain situation. You're playing some kind of line, and you don't know how to get out of it. You don't know how to get to the next change. It happens to everybody, right? So chromaticism can be your friend in that regard. So keep that one in mind. Let's do this lick. We'll start it out at maybe. One, two, ready, go. Rhythmic invention, if you will. So he's developing these ideas in more of a rhythmic way. So he's, again, outlining these chords using chromaticism, going from that A flat to the G flat, and then outlining that A flat 7 chord. Right? More of a simple, it's a much simpler melodic line, but still very heavy. It's all the criteria of a good bebop line. All right, so let's try this one out. Maybe a little faster. 1, 2, ready, go. Let's try out the tune. Okay, so I think maybe we'll play the head once, and then all together as an ensemble, and then we'll trade eights. Maybe we'll do that. So maybe we'll go down the line, and we'll trade eights. We'll do something like that. Maybe not a whole full chorus, but give you guys a chance to hear what other people are playing. And try out some of these licks when they arrive. So a technique that I often use when I'm learning, new vocabulary and learning new tunes is I'll write out stuff. I'll write out little melodic phrases myself or transcribe stuff like we have here, and I'll basically plug it in at the various change. So like for example, lick number 1. You can put over the let's see here. Yeah, you can put over C minor to G7. So yeah, well, at the very end, you could do that. The end of the form. The lick number 2, you can do the C minor. It's the first phrase, right? Two bars of C minor and then 2 bars of F minor. Phrase number 3 is this kind of minor 2-5-1. You could do that. You could throw that phrase in on measure 5. If you have to manage to C minor 7. So while you're improvising, think about kind of have a game plan on how you want to attack this. Say maybe you want to just focus on one of these little licks. Like maybe focus on that 2-5-1 in the key of D flat, lick number 5. Which will arise when you go to the E flat minor 7 chord and whatever bar that is. Measure 9 of the form. So try and improvise something using these kind of scalar ideas, using these various modes that we talked about. Also outlining the chords, playing these chord tones. Right, outlining the chords, and you can think eighth notes. A lot of eighth notes, can't go wrong with eighth notes in bebop language. Also, eighth note triplets, that kind of thing. So keep all that in mind, and we'll see how it goes. We'll go. 1, 2, 1, 2, okay, go. Yeah, so I think going forward in your practice, you can think about, like I said, over every chord, practice the various scales, going up, all the way up the instrument, all the way down the instrument, and then also arpeggiating the various chords going up. Going through that at a very slow tempo and then gradually speeding up is going to help you gain facility over making these changes, right? So I think try and take these ideas home and shed them, right? Go to the woodshed and practice this kind of stuff. And I think these different kind of melodic ideas will do you guys a lot of good as you practice your improvising and your jazz journey. And you can apply these concepts to any tune you learn, any tune you want, and pretty much any style as well. So